a 17% tariff on Mexican tomatoes, effective this week after the termination of a long-standing trade agreement. The move aims to protect US farmers who have complained about unfair pricing from Mexican imports. The tariff could increase tomato prices by 10% and reduce demand by 5%, according to some experts. Small businesses, including restaurants like Teresa Razzo's in California, fear that these rising costs could lead to closures. Razzo's, whose restaurants rely heavily on tomatoes, said, "Give it 3 months and then we go bankrupt." The US Commerce Department ended the 1996 tomato suspension agreement, claiming it failed to protect US growers from unfairly priced Mexican tomatoes. However, Mexican producers argue that the agreement had been largely followed and that the decision is politically motivated. The tariff is part of President Trump's broader protectionist trade policy, with further tariffs on other Mexican goods possible. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has vowed to minimize the impact, but has not provided specific measures. Well, joining us to discuss the ramifications of not just a tariff on tomatoes, but the wider global ramifications of Trump's trade policies, Professor Georgi Toleraya, an international affairs expert who is joining us from Moscow. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, Professor Toleraya. This, of course, is just a snapshot on a wider image and picture that we're getting from the US over these trade tariffs, looking at imbalances. But the impacts we're detailing there, restaurants saying that this tariff on tomatoes, something which could seem trivial, could have an impact on economies with businesses closing down. How significant is Trump's sort of action and spontaneity when announcing these sanctions and bringing them in on a regular occurrence as we've seen over the past months?
Well, of course, I'm impressed by the Trump's salto mortale, I would say, well, changing his mind. And you have discussed this recently. I would like just to add a couple of words on this, maybe by my personal experience, because I just received a message from my brother-in-law in Voronezh, who witnessed the attack by the drone, and 15 people are wounded, and there is some damage. It's just in the center of the city, and he actually witnessed it. So Trump's promise to supply more arms to Ukraine and his dissatisfaction with Putin, it doesn't very well resonate in Russia. Nobody is surprised, of course, and we know how much the Western world is worth, and we know how stubborn our adversaries are. I was a little bit surprised by my Australian colleague comment. I served in Australia for 3 years, so I know the country a bit. So it's a very lucky country, far away from everything. Why should it involve itself into supporting what they call a free democracy? Ukraine is hardly a free country or a free democracy by all means. But nevertheless, I think that Trump's actions and his promise to impose additional tariffs on Russia doesn't impress much anybody, regardless whether it happened in 50 days or more than 50, or it will take longer. The markets are prepared for that. We've been prepared for sanctions, and we've experienced sanctions for many years now. So that won't change Russian strategy, and that won't change war current much. Unfortunately, due to this decision by Trump and possible supply of arms and in other measures of economic pressure on Russia, the war will prolong longer. More people will die, both in Ukraine and Russia, and this is something not to celebrate. But we hope for support of our allies and our friends, including BRICS countries, one of which is India. And I think that India might be well affected by the tariff measures by Trump. So I think it is useful for all the countries to take into account, first of all, their own national interest and the simple notion of justice, justice not only in international affairs point of view and international law judicial term, but human justice. So how we can approach issues of international
Yes, Professor
also from
Tolaroya.
this point of view.
Yeah, sorry, we just lost signal with you there very briefly. Also joining us to discuss this topic is Charles Thompson, an Australian journalist joining us from Sydney. Charles, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. I think there's a key point from this latest tariff that Trump has introduced on tomatoes, of course, getting rid of a treaty that stood since the 1990s. And it is the potential impact on people and on American people, both small business owners but also consumers as well, with price impacts taking hold. Do you think that Trump is thinking about the American people, at least not in the short term when he's making these decisions? Or is this really a wider game and a wider play, the art of the deal, and Trump's not necessarily thinking about the collateral?
Look, I know this is a very divisive subject. I know that other countries would wish that this was not happening, but basically Trump has just pulled the plug on the rest of the world and is trying to bring manufacturing back to America. How successful he'll be, time will tell. But at the moment, the figures coming out of the United States are pretty good, so they seem to be doing okay. The difficulty is dealing with his unpredictableness, and this is just Trump. And also I think we've just got to be a little bit more level-headed, not get emotional. I'm amazed to see that I'm from Australia. We still don't have an ambassador from America yet. What are our politicians and our bureaucrats doing in Australia? Give me a break. So communication is the key here. Saying bad things about the Americans, saying bad things about Trump is not going to help anyone. And at the end of the day, they hold all the cards. They are the biggest economy in the world. They're a huge market, and we have to work with them.
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to thank Professor Tolaroya. Charles, you will be staying with us as we move on now. And reportedly,